We've all heard stories about power-hungry HOAs, ridiculous fines for leaving your trash can out too long, threats over the color of your mailbox, or letters demanding you cut your grass half an inch shorter. But what if an HOA took things too far? For Daniel Carter, what started as a simple dispute over a $100 fine turned into something much more sinister. He woke up to shattering glass. 3 men in HOA uniforms were already inside his home. They weren't there to hand him a notice or issue a warning. They came to rob him. What they didn't know, his security system was directly linked to Homeland Security. And what happened next? Even the FBI wasn't ready for it. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The sharp crash of breaking glass ripped through the silence, jolting Daniel Carter from his sleep. His breath hitched, heart slamming against his ribs as his mind scrambled to make sense of sound. Had he imagined it? A dream, maybe? But then there was again a slow, deliberate crunch of shattered glass under heavy boots. Someone was inside his house. Terror gripped him, cold and suffocating. His hand shot out toward the nightstand, fingers fumbling for his phone. He nearly knocked it to the floor in his panic, his vision blurry from sleep and adrenaline. With shaking hands, he unlocked the screen and pulled up the security app. The live feed flickered to life. 3 figures, dressed in dark uniforms, were moving through his living room. Their faces were obscured by black balaclavas. But one thing sent an icy chill down Daniel's spine. Bold white letters emblazoned across their jackets. HOA, the Homeowners Association, breaking into his home at 2:45 in the morning. Then one of them spoke, his voice rough and cold. Get the safe. He's got cash somewhere. This guy thinks he's smarter than us. He's about to learn. Daniel's blood ran ice cold. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some ridiculous violation notice or a noise complaint. This was a home invasion. And worse, they knew exactly what they were looking for. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears as he slowly slid out of bed, every movement careful, calculated. He had seconds, maybe less, before they reached his bedroom. His mind raced through his options. Calling the police was useless. By the time they arrived, these men would be long gone, and judging by how smoothly they moved, this wasn't their first break-in. He needed to buy time. He crept toward the hallway closet, where his father's old 12-gauge Remington shotgun was stored. It had been passed down to him years ago, a relic of his dad's hunting days. He'd never had to use it before. But tonight, that was about to change. His hands trembled as he grabbed the weapon, his fingers fumbling to load the shells. His breath came in quick, shallow bursts, but he forced himself to stay steady. 1 shell, 2, 3. He didn't know how many he would need, but he wasn't taking chances. Then he remembered his security system. 3 years ago, after a stalking incident involving a former co-worker, Homeland Security had offered to upgrade his home security system, a direct response linked to their network. If a break-in was detected, the system would bypass 911 and send an immediate alert to federal agents. He glanced down at his phone. His security app had already lit up with notification. Breach detected. Homeland Security notified. A slow, shaky breath of relief left his lips. Help was coming. But the question was, would they arrive in time? From the hallway, a voice drifted toward him. Low, calm, too confident. See the cameras? One of the intruders muttered. Yeah, he knows we're here. A laugh, a casual chuckle, like they weren't breaking into a man's home, but rather enjoying the game. Daniel gritted his teeth, gripping the shotgun tighter. They thought they were in control. They had no idea what was coming. Daniel pressed his back against the wall, shotgun raised, heart hammering in his chest. He could hear them now. 3 sets of footsteps, moving deliberately down the hallway. They weren't searching. They knew exactly where to go. They knew where he was. His throat was dry as he steadied his grip. He had to make a choice. Hide, and hope Homeland Security arrived in time, or confront them now, before they forced their way into his bedroom. A decision was made for him. One of the men stopped just outside his door. A brief pause, then the handle twisted. Daniel took a sharp breath. This was it. "You're trespassing," he barked, his voice raw with adrenaline. The footsteps halted. For a moment, The house was dead silent. Then a voice responded, smooth, condescending. You think we care about that? The door creaked, open an inch. A tall man with broad shoulders and icy blue eyes stepped halfway inside. He held a crowbar in one hand, tapping it lazily against his palm. The glint of metal at his hip sent a fresh wave of dread through Daniel's veins. A gun. The man smirked. HOA makes the rules around here. Daniel's pulse spiked, but his hands didn't waver. His finger tightened on the trigger. He was prepared to fire, prepared to fight for his life. Then, the roar of helicopter blades split through the air. The intruder's head snapped toward the sound. Their cocky confidence shattered in an instant. From outside, the deafening screech of tires. The blaring command of a megaphone. Federal agents, drop your weapons. Red and blue lights flooded the house. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as the front door exploded inward, nearly ripped from its hinges. And then, chaos. The moment the front door burst open, the house erupted into pure chaos. On the ground. Now. A flood of federal agents stormed inside, dressed in black tactical gear, rifles raised, their movements sharp and precise. The intruders spun toward the commotion, their arrogant facade shattered in an instant. One of them, the tall guy with the crowbar, lunged for the back door. Bad move. Two agents tackled him mid-step, slamming him to the ground. His weapon clattered across the floor as his face was shoved against the hardwood. The second man threw up his hands, his eyes darting frantically as if searching for an escape route. There wasn't one. The third, the one who had spoken to Daniel, stood frozen, hands flexing at his sides. His jaw tightened. He was calculating, deciding whether to fight or surrender. A Homeland Security agent took one step forward, rifle trained on him. Don't be stupid. The intruder's fists clenched, his face twisted in fury. Then he slowly raised his hands. Drop the weapon, an agent barked, with a sharp exhale. He let the gun fall to floor. Daniel remained in the hallway, shotgun still raised, his body locked in place. The adrenaline was still pumping, his vision sharp, his breathing ragged. It was over. They were caught. One of the agents turned toward him, a tall man, broad-shouldered, with a Homeland Security patch on his vest. He lifted his visor, sharp eyes locking onto Daniel. Mr. Carter? Daniel nodded, his grip on the shotgun finally loosening. The agent gave a curt nod. You're safe now. But as Daniel lowered the weapon, he caught movement. The tall intruder, the one who had smirked at him, the one who had spoken so calmly, so confidently, was being dragged outside. But as he passed Daniel, he turned his head, his cold, steady gaze locked onto Daniel's. Then he smirked, and in a low, almost amused tone he muttered, "This isn't over." Daniel's fingers clenched. For the first time since the invasion began, he realized this was only the beginning. Daniel sat in the back of an ambulance, his hands still trembling as he gripped a bottle of water. The fogged-up glass gave him a blurred view of his destroyed home, shattered windows, overturned furniture, the front door barely hanging on its hinges. None of it felt real. But the scene outside was what truly made his stomach twist. The intruders were being dragged away in handcuffs. One by one, they were shoved into the backs of police cruisers, their expressions ranging from stunned disbelief to quiet rage. The tall one, the leader, barely reacted. He just sat there, shoulders squared, wearing that same smug smirk. Daniel's jaw tightened. This guy wasn't afraid. That meant he thought he was getting out of this. A voice cut through his thoughts. Mr. Carter? Daniel turned to see a female agent, dressed in black tactical gear, her Homeland Security badge gleaming under the streetlights. She crouched beside him, her expression calm but serious. Are you aware that these men are part of an organized crime ring connected to HOA scams across the state? She asked. Daniel blinked. HOA scams? No, he admitted, his voice hoarse. I thought they just came after me for being behind on some payments. The agent sighed. That's how it starts. She pulled a small notebook from her vest and flipped it open. Small fines, then bigger ones, then threats. And when that doesn't work, they escalate. Daniel ran a hand down his face. Escalate how? Her expression darkened. Home invasions, property destruction, even violence. His stomach turned. And no one stopped him? The agent's lips pressed into a thin line. HOAs operate in legal gray areas. They're technically private organizations with their own internal rules. That means they can bend and break the law, and they know it. Daniel's fingers curled into a fist. So these guys have been getting away with this for years. Not anymore. He exhaled slowly and glanced toward the police cruisers. The tall man, Greg Henshaw, as the agents had called him, was still watching him. Even in cuffs, even surrounded by federal agents, his eyes held no fear. Daniel's teeth clenched. He wasn't going to let these guys walk away. The agent studied him for a moment. They're dangerous, Mr. Carter. Daniel met her gaze, his voice low. Yeah, so am I. 2 days later, Daniel sat across from Sarah Cole's attorney in her sleek downtown office. She was sharp, ruthless, the kind of lawyer who made judges nervous. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, and her tailored suit made her look more like a corporate assassin than an attorney. She flipped through a thick stack of papers, her manicured fingers tapping against a polished mahogany desk. They broke into your house, armed. We have audio recording, security footage, and eyewitness testimony. That's more than enough to put them away. Daniel leaned forward. That's not enough. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? He gritted his teeth. I want them destroyed. I want them in prison for the rest of their lives. I want their HOA licenses revoked. I want them to lose everything. Sarah's lips curled into a smirk. Good. She slid a folder across the desk. We're filing charges for armed robbery, home invasion, conspiracy, and extortion. That alone could get them 20 years. But I've also been digging into their HOA financials. Daniel's pulse ticked up, and she leaned back in her chair, eyes gleaming. Turns out they've been embezzling HOA funds for years. That opens a door to federal fraud charges. How long? Daniel asked. Sarah's smirk sharpened. Another 20 years. Minimum. Daniel exhaled slowly, his knuckles tightening. Perfect. Sarah studied him carefully. Are you sure about this? Daniel's eyes burned with cold fury. They already retaliated. This time it's my turn. 2 weeks later, Greg Henshaw and his men sat in the defendant's box, dressed in dark suits, their expressions carefully neutral. But Daniel could see the tension beneath the surface. Henshaw had shaved his head since the arrest, but it didn't make him look any less like a thug in a suit. His hands were clasped together on the table, his body still, but his eyes flicked toward Daniel. Cold, calculating. Daniel clenched his jaw. This was the man who had broken into his home, threatened him, stolen from him. And now he sat there as if this was all beneath him. The prosecutor, a no-nonsense man named Daniel Rhodes, strode toward the jury, breaking and entering, armed robbery, extortion, assault. He listed each charge with deliberate precision. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This was a targeted, organized crime operation, masked under the authority of an HOA. Henshaw's lawyer, a slick-looking man named Andrew Bishop, stood and buttoned his jacket. Your Honor, my client maintains that this was all a misunderstanding. He was simply enforcing HOA regulations. Sarah, seated beside Daniel, let out a quiet snort. The judge narrowed his eyes. Enforcing regulations by breaking into a man's home at 2 a.m? Bishop didn't falter. Mr. Carter had a history of unpaid fines and noncompliance. The HOA has the right to issue penalties. Rhodes tilted his head. Interesting, because last I checked, armed robbery isn't in the HOA bylaws. The jury murmured. Then Greg Henshaw stood. His lawyer hesitated, but Henshaw shrugged him off and stepped up to the microphone. He adjusted it with slow, deliberate movements, then smiled faintly. We were doing our jobs, he said smoothly. Homeowners need to understand that rules exist for a reason. If people think they can ignore HOA regulations, there have to be consequences. Daniel's hands curled into fists beneath the table. The prosecutor's smile was razor sharp. So, you're saying breaking and entering was justified? Henshaw's smile faltered, just slightly. Rhodes took a step closer. Because last time I checked, pointing a crowbar at someone's head wasn't standard HOA procedure. The jury was watching intently now, their expressions shifting. Henshaw sat back in his chair, his smirk gone. For the first time, Daniel saw it, and it was only the beginning. The courtroom was silent. The weight of Henshaw's words hung in the air. But the jury's shifting expressions told Daniel everything he needed to know. They weren't buying it. The prosecutor, Daniel Rhodes, took a slow step forward. So, Mr. Henshaw, let's be clear. Your idea of consequences involves breaking into a man's home in the middle of the night, armed, demanding money? Henshaw's jaw tightened. He was non-compliant. We gave him warnings, and when he ignored them, Rhodes cut him off. You decided to take matters into your own hands. He turned to the jury, voice calm but firm. They didn't show up with a letter. They showed up with weapons. Henshaw's lawyer, Andrew Bishop, shifted in his seat. Objection, Your Honor. Overruled. The judge said immediately, Answer the question, Mr. Henshaw. Henshaw exhaled sharply, shifting his weight. For the first time, his confidence cracked. Daniel could feel it, the tide turning. Rhodes didn't let up. How many other homeowners did you target? How many people were too scared to fight back? Silence. Henshaw didn't answer. Daniel clenched his jaw. Did you think I'd be one of them? Henshaw's eyes snapped to his. For a brief moment, there was real hatred in his stare. Rhodes leaned in. You crossed the line, Mr. Henshaw, and now you're going to pay for it. Henshaw didn't respond, because there was nothing left to say. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Daniel sat rigid in his chair. His fingers curled into his palms as he watched the jurors file back into the courtroom. Some looked furious. Others just looked disgusted. But none of them met Henshaw's gaze. The judge cleared his throat. Has the jury reached a verdict? A woman in the front row stood, her expression firm. We have, Your Honor. She unfolded a small sheet of paper, took a steadying breath, and read, On the charges of armed robbery, home invasion, extortion, and conspiracy, we find the defendant, Greg Henshaw, guilty on all counts. A ripple of whispers swept through the courtroom. Daniel exhaled a slow, shaky breath as the judge's gavel struck down. Mr. Henshaw, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. A sharp, cold silence filled the air. Daniel turned his head just in time to see Henshaw stiffen, his jaw locked tight. His lawyer's face had drained of color, but Henshaw, he barely reacted until the guards moved toward him. That's when he turned. As they secured the cuffs around his wrists, he locked eyes with Daniel. And for the first time, there was no arrogance, no smirk, just quiet, seething rage. Then he spoke. His voice was low, barely above a whisper, but Daniel heard every word. This isn't over. Daniel didn't blink, didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. Yeah, he said, voice cold. It is... The guards pulled Henshaw away. He didn't resist, didn't fight, but his eyes never left Daniel's. And as the doors swung shut behind him, Daniel let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. 2 days after the trial, Daniel sat at his kitchen table, staring at a steaming cup of coffee. For the first time in months, his house was quiet. No threatening letters. No HOA thugs lurking around. Henshaw was gone, and yet something still felt unfinished. His phone buzzed. A restricted number. He hesitated, then answered. Hello. A familiar voice greeted him. Agent Walker. Homeland Security. Carter. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Daniel frowned. About what? There was a pause. Then Walker's tone shifted. Henshaw's talking. Daniel's stomach tightened. What do you mean? Walker exhaled. He's naming names. And based on what we're hearing, he wasn't a mastermind. He was just following orders. A cold shiver ran down Daniel's spine. Following orders from who? Walker hesitated. Then his voice dropped. We don't know yet. But this thing? It's bigger than just one HOA. Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. How big? Walker side, we've traced financial records to 6 other states. HOA board members, private security firms, offshore accounts, money laundering, racketeering, organized extortion. What they did to you, it's happening everywhere. Daniel clenched his jaw. So this isn't over. A humorless chuckle on the other end. Not even close. There was a rustling of papers. Then Walker's voice sharpened. We're going to need you to testify again. Daniel ran a hand down his face. He had thought that getting Henshaw locked up would be the end of this nightmare. He was wrong. His eyes drifted to the framed letter on his wall, the one from Homeland Security, the one thanking him for his bravery, for standing up, for fighting back. His pulse steadied. He had no intention of stopping now. Daniel exhaled. Let me know where and when. Walker paused. Then he said something that sent a cold chill through Daniel's bones. Be careful, Carter. These people don't like loose ends. The call ended. Daniel set the phone down and stared out the window. The street was quiet, peaceful, but he knew better now. Somewhere out there, someone was watching, and he would be ready, because this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all of them. And Daniel Carter was going to make damn sure the right people paid. HOAs were never supposed to be this powerful. They were supposed to maintain neighborhoods, not extort and terrorize homeowners. But Daniel's story? It exposed something much bigger. How deep does this corruption go? How many more people are being silenced, threatened, forced to comply? What do you think? Would you fight back? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more insane real-life stories. Because trust me, this isn't the last one.